Welcome to Market Madness, the podcast with GMT Sport where every day is like deadline day. We are live, so Liv, please watch your language.
I'm going to need to. Market Madness is the ultimate football podcast for fans who want to go beyond the headlines and into the stories that shape the transfer market. Each episode will feature high-profile guests, breaking news, features, games, and challenges.
Oh yes, and you can watch this show live on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Search at GMT Sport, and feel free to comment. We'll try to read them out. You can also listen on your favorite podcast app of your choice, and the links can be found in the show notes. For more information on any of the stories discussed today, head over to GMT Sport's website.
Now, myself, Olivia Buzaglo, and Joel Beya are back for episode 8, joined as always by our resident journalist, Ben Jacobs. Ben, how are you?
Very good. Very excited to be back, and hopefully we can break a bit of news on the show.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Right, coming up on the show today then, hand the title to Liverpool now. Sorry, Joel. We'll be chatting to James Pearce from The Athletic about the title race.
I'm not so sure about that one. We've also got senior GMT Sport reporter Fabrizio Romano back on the show answering our transfer questions.
Fantasy Premier League expert Gianni Buttice is dropping in to judge my FPL squad. After this current game week that's going on right now, I think he's going to have a lot to say.
And plus, as usual, we got Ben who will be providing us with the latest breaking news. But let's get into it. This is Market Madness on GMT Sport. Okay, so as we always start the show with asking Ben questions for his challenge. So during the show, we'd like Ben to find out the answer to this question. What does Eberechi Eze's future look like this summer?
Ooh, good question.
That is a good question. I'm actually really looking forward to finding out the answer to that, Ben. You have the whole show to do it. I mean,
is that because you want Chelsea to be included in his future?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like we've got enough players, but another player that occupies that number 10 spot, I just don't think is right for Chelsea right now. But I'm interested to see if he's going to get the so-called big move that I think he deserves. So we shall see. I mean, Joel,
I'm on the case.
Good. We're looking forward to it. Joel, how are you? Have you got over that hammer blow to Arsenal's title challenge?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for asking.
You sure? Are you sure?
I'm fine. I just had some time to reflect, and to be honest with you, when you have no number 9, but you're still here pushing and competing in the title challenge. Yes, we are 11 points behind with a game in hand, but we're still competing in my eyes. We've got 12 games to go. We can get a maximum of 36 points. As long as we can keep on going, there is hope, Liv. There is hope.
I mean, yeah, I think it's over, to be perfectly honest. But you never know. Until it's mathematically not possible, I can understand why Arsenal fans are still going to be dreaming. But I mean, last weekend was a perfect one for Liverpool, wasn't it? Winning at the Etihad, it means, like Joel says, they're currently 11 points clear of Arsenal in second, but Arsenal do have that game in hand. Both teams play tonight. Big games as well. Arsenal with Forest and Liverpool with Newcastle. Right, let's bring in our first guest of the show today. It's James Pearce, who's the Liverpool reporter for The Athletic and a regular on the Walk On podcast. James, thank you so much for coming on Market Madness. Just first of all, I mean, how are you? It's been a pretty lovely weekend for Liverpool, wasn't it?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks. Good to be with you guys. Yeah, it was the dream weekend for Liverpool, wasn't it? I don't think anyone expected Arsenal to slip up in the way they did against West Ham. And then for Sunday, it felt like the pressure was off a little bit going to the Etihad, and Liverpool played with freedom. I think that was reflected in the performance, and yeah, a real statement victory and a big step towards the dream of that 20th top flight title.
Now, James, I'm still a believer, as you might have heard a few minutes ago, but I'm asking you, do you reckon it's over?
I don't think it's over, because Liverpool have been stung a few times in the modern era, missed out on the title, of course, twice by a single point during the Jurgen Klopp reign. But yeah, there's no getting away from the fact it's a commanding position to be in with 11 games to go. And it's also not so much, you look at this Liverpool team and how ruthlessly consistent they've been. Was it 1 defeat in 27 games? Are they really going to implode and lose 3 or 4 during the run-in, but also, at the minute, it's difficult to see Arsenal putting together the type of run that would really crank up that pressure.
It's difficult to see them scoring goals, if anything. Goodness.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think that is one of the biggest differences, isn't it, between the teams? Because although, Mo Salah is obviously rewriting the record books with the heroics he's producing week in, week out, Liverpool do have, plenty of other avenues with goals as well, with, Diaz and Gakpo and Jota to a slightly lesser extent chipping in as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty incredible season. And I don't really think, James, anyone expected it. I, for one, definitely didn't expect it. When Arne Slot came in, I was thinking, I just don't really know what to expect from this Liverpool side. But, I mean, the foundations obviously have been set by Jurgen Klopp, and he obviously took over the team that was set up perfectly, albeit struggled a little bit towards the back end of last season. But what do you think he has got right largely in this first season? Because Liverpool have been absolutely brilliant from day one, really.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, you're right. I don't know any Liverpool fan anywhere that expected in their wildest dreams to find themselves in this position at the back end of February. It was rewind to last summer, and all the talk was how on earth did Liverpool cope without such an iconic figure, and everyone was obviously pointing to the example of how the misery at Manchester United and the kind of cycles that they've been in have changed since losing Alex Ferguson. But yeah, I think you're right. The first thing to say is obviously that Slot was very fortunate to inherit such a talented squad. He's been the first to acknowledge that. But he has elevated so many of those players to the next level, and that's testament to his coaching acumen. I think the tweak in the style to a slightly less hectic, less intense, more possession-based game a lot of the time has suited these players. I think it certainly helped Liverpool in terms of keeping players fit. I think you rewind 12 months and, Liverpool had around the Carabao Cup final late last February, they had 8, 9, 10 players missing. This time around, I think it's 2 at the moment. So you speak to the players, he's a great communicator, his attention to detail. They all know exactly where they stand with him. He can be blunt when he needs to be. I think we saw that with some of his criticism of Darwin Núñez. But yeah, I think you could look through that team and see examples of just how good he's been in terms of, Gravenberch. You look at Szoboszlai, you look at Gakpo, you look at Konate. The players who had lost their way towards the end of the Klopp era, have been absolutely rejuvenated by Arne Slot.
James, good to see you. You speak about rejuvenation, and I completely agree. And looking a bit further ahead, the only question mark remains about these established and performing Liverpool stars: Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk. Team is flying, mood is great, silverware is very likely, and yet in very atypical Liverpool terms, we still don't have clarity over any of these 3 big names. At this point, is that a cause for concern, or are Liverpool still calm about the situation of the futures of that trio?
I think it's certainly a huge topic of debate amongst the fan base, and I think because Liverpool have been doing so well on the pitch, it hasn't become the kind of big problem and the big distraction that I think it would have been. Can you imagine if results weren't great? There'd be so much talk about, well, it must be because of all the uncertainty surrounding, what is an unprecedented situation where, in only a few months' time, your captain, your vice captain, and your top scorer are all potentially going to be free agents. So yeah, they're all different situations. I think I'm still confident that Van Dijk will stay put. I think he's been by far and away the best centre half in European football this season. It's not only what he gives you on the pitch, but he is the ideal role model and leader and talisman in terms of the way that he conducts himself off the pitch as well. So I think the fact there's been so little talk about what are the potential options, where he could potentially go, I think that points to the most likelihood is him staying put. Of course, with Mo Salah, we know that there's this strong interest from the Saudi Pro League, and I think that will come down to a straight choice between him. Does he want to stay at Liverpool and keep rewriting the record books, or does he want to go to Saudi? I thought it was interesting in his interview with TNT Sports ahead of the game tonight that he where previously he's kind of been quite outspoken about how there'd been no progress. He just kind of said in a polite way, no, there is no update, which I don't think he's ready to walk away from top level football. And then, probably the biggest question mark clearly is around Alexander-Arnold. Close to him say that, there hasn't been a final decision yet. But, if you speak to people in Spain, then Real Madrid are still very confident that he will end up there come the summer.
James, on the Trent one, obviously Van Dijk, we know what all three of them can offer. Salah's still doing it at the high, all three of them still doing it at the highest level. But given Trent's age and where he is in his career, like Ben said when he asked you that first question about them, it's not typical of Liverpool to get into this situation. So how do you think the club have found themselves in a situation where someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's a £100 million player, maybe like 70 to 90 million pound player, potentially going for free in like the peak years of his career?
Yeah, I think the best answer to that is the upheaval that there has been behind the scenes, where you think back to when Julian Ward stepped down as sporting director in the summer of 2023, and then Liverpool brought in Jörg Schmadtke as an interim replacement as sporting director, really, and contracts just went on the back burner. And also around that period, FSG, the owners, were considering potential sale of the club, investment opportunities. They end up only selling a minority stake. And then, of course, in November of last season, you had that situation where Jurgen Klopp tells the owners that I'm done. I'm going to walk away at the end of the season. And then everything then was put on ice regarding contract renewals, because it was like, well, the first thing a player's going to want to know is, well, are you committed for the long term yourself in terms of Klopp? And clearly he didn't want it out in the open at that point, and he wasn't going to lie to anyone. So that was kind of how we found ourselves in this position. And then, so it was probably the biggest issue that Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes inherited when they came on board, last March, April time, to kind of shape this new era at Liverpool. And Trent is the one that's probably the hardest one to get your head around, because I think with Salah and Van Dijk, because of their age, it wasn't that much of a surprise that you would let them get down to their last year, because we know that the owners are kind of risk adverse to giving out huge extensions to players in the twilight years of their career. But yeah, it's certainly been kind of a big mistake to have allowed Trent to get this far down, because as you said, he's a £100 million asset that they could be potentially losing for nothing.
James, what's your sense on Darwin Núñez and his future? We know in his last press conference, Arne Slot spoke about Núñez's application, but still made the broader point that his default is very hard-working, which is maybe why he was so surprised not to have seen that from Núñez in the last two games. Do you think he'll stay or go in the summer? And how advanced, to your knowledge, in the winter window was a Saudi approach from Al Nassr?
Yeah, I think it's increasingly likely that Darwin Núñez will move on come the summer. I think you can just see that he hasn't kicked on this season in the way that everyone hoped. I think, rewind to last summer, there was a lot of talk about, could Arne Slot be the man to kind of really help him realize that full potential? And he's almost been the kind of one nut that Slot hasn't been able to crack, in terms of, so many other players he's improved and elevated, yet the frustration with just how erratic Núñez has continued. And you only have to look at how few Premier League games he's started to show that trying to earn the manager's trust is still an ongoing challenge for him. And then, of course, he had that miserable night against Aston Villa. Then the following day, Arne Slot said he was more angry with his work ethic. He since said that he didn't think his work ethic was up to it against Wolves either. So in terms of January, we know that, I know that there was contact from an intermediary acting on behalf of the Saudi Pro League that wanted to know whether Liverpool were prepared to do a deal. But Liverpool's answer was pretty emphatic that they weren't prepared to consider a sale midway through the season. They were determined to keep this squad together. I think part of that was also influenced by, the difficulty in trying to replace him. I think you only have to look at Arsenal's troubles with trying to bring in another attacker in January to see it wasn't a particularly great market to be able to operate in. But I think, come the summer, I think a parting of the ways may well suit all parties. And yeah, I would expect Liverpool to be investing in a new number 9 before next season.
Really quickly, James, St. James's Park tonight, Liverpool, Alexander Isak in blinding form, possibly the time that Liverpool start slipping up, correct?
I think there's some wishful thinking on your part there. I mean, I think one thing we can guarantee tonight at Anfield is goals, because I was there at St James's back in early December when it was the 3-3, and of course Newcastle salvaged a point late on when there was a mistake from Quivine Kelleher. You know, these games between Liverpool and Newcastle guaranteed drama. You think back to those iconic tussles, the 4-3s in the mid to late 90s. So yeah, it's going to have a different feel to it, because of course Slot and his assistant Sipka Hulshoff both banned. They both start 2-match touchline bans tonight. So Johnny Heitinger will be on the touchline, but yeah, I expect Anfield to be absolutely bouncing, and those Liverpool fans will be hoping for a favour off Nottingham Forest at the same time.
Oh, God.
Just a final one from me, James. If we look ahead also to the League Cup final, from Newcastle's point of view, the narrative will be all about, can they bring in a first piece of silverware, major anyway, for the first time in 70 years? But what about for Liverpool? Because the bar's been set so high under Arne Slot that people are working on this assumption. The Premier League is wrapped up. Champions League, they're one of the favourites. And then, of course, when they went out in the FA Cup to Plymouth, there was almost a, hang on a minute, your season can very quickly unravel, as we've seen with Manchester City. So how important is it, in your opinion, that Liverpool get an early and that first piece of silverware, just in case, of course, the back half of the season doesn't go according to plan?
Yeah, it's huge. I think you're right. In the build-up to the final, the narrative will be formed around, can Newcastle end that massive long wait for silverware? Of course, Liverpool are going back to defend the trophy they won 12 months ago. But I don't think that makes it any less important to Liverpool. For Arne Slot, it's huge. His first major final as Liverpool manager. And, I think it doesn't matter whether there's bigger prizes within your grasp that are on the horizon. You always want to get that first big trophy under your belt. You think back to the Brendan Rodgers era when it looked like he was going to be the man to end that long title drought. It didn't happen in such agonizing circumstances, and he ended up not winning a thing during his Liverpool reign. So I know 12 months ago winning the Carabao Cup didn't lead to the kind of fairy tale finale to the Klopp reign that everyone was thinking it might do at the time, but to go in the distance in the Carabao Cup wasn't the reason why Liverpool fell short during the run-in. And I think going to Wembley, winning it, having that feeling of kind of achieving something special together will only galvanise Liverpool as they kick on. And obviously the dream scenario for them is to add the Champions League and the Premier League to that Carabao Cup before the end of the campaign.
Oh my gosh, what a dangerous season. Listen, James, I want to say thank you very much for joining us and, just getting it right, because the game is at Anfield, and maybe I'm a little bit less confident than I initially was. But listen, you can keep up with James across The Athletic, including their podcast dedicated to Liverpool, which is called Walk On. And you can also follow James on X at James Pearce LFC. This is Market Madness from Gimme Sport.
Right, before we move on, Ben, I think you've got some breaking news for us, haven't you?
Jose Mourinho is considering legal action against Galatasaray. This follows a 0-0 draw between Fenerbahce and Galatasaray in Turkey. And afterwards, Mourinho did a press conference in which he said he was disappointed by the Galatasaray bench because they were constantly complaining to the fourth official and they were, quote, jumping around like monkeys. Now, Galatasaray took that comment and alleged the use of the word monkeys was racist. Of course, jumping around like monkeys is just normal terminology. Fenerbahce came out and said it's, quote, pathetic slander. And Jose Mourinho is yet to comment. But I now understand that Mourinho is exploring legal action of his own and may be about to write to Galatasaray through his lawyers and take formal action suing the Turkish club for defamation. So this has become a huge story in Turkey. Jose Mourinho is currently considering whether to sue Galatasaray for defamation after they accused him of being racist.
As he should, because for someone who has, I won't say that I've supported the clubs he's actually managed at, but I'm a huge Jose Mourinho fan. And when I look at his relationship with the players that he has, for example, the Essians of this world, or, you know, like they talk like father figures, and the opportunity, and he's probably the manager. Him and Arsene Wenger has embraced, I'll say, even Africa players more than I've ever seen in my life living, and even some of the personal stuff that I know that he's done for friends and people that I know. I think they're pushing it here too far, and they're trying to use the fact that we know he can be an emotional character. They're trying to use it against him. So hopefully he goes against it, and hopefully he wins as well. I'm backing Jose on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it? There's a massive difference between using a derogatory term, and of course we want to stamp out racism from the game. But before the use of the animal, he says jumping around which is a normal metaphor. Jumping around like monkeys is not racist terminology. It's just a description for what he felt that they were doing. And he's well within his rights, therefore, to take legal action.
Nah, you know what? I'm not happy about that one, and I'm very vocal when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm never afraid to speak, and I think that's just ridiculous. And hopefully that there's some sense to what's going on here, because that's just ridiculous. But anyway, I want to shine the light on something else, something a little bit more upbeat. We have the man himself who's ready to come on. The man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Fabrizio Romano. Let's go. Mr. Fabrizio Romano, thank you for joining myself and Ben Jacobs. How are you?
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. All good, all good, all good. Preparing for a crazy summer. So all good. Thank you.
Hey, you know what? And Joel, you're a better singer than me. We might just have to start with one quick thing. Fabrizio Romano, as of a few days ago, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
You're a good singer, Joe.
Excellent.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, great one. Thank you.
No worries. All right, cool. So let's get to the questions, Fab. Now that we know that you're a year older and a year smarter and wiser as well, please, can you give us some insight on Ademola Lookman? Now, this is an interesting one. He's obviously done very well at his club. You know, he's been nominated in the Ballon d'Ors list, African Player of the Year. Where is he going to be in the summer?
Not in Italy, not in Bergamo, for sure, because he's going to leave Atalanta. So the decision was made even before what happened with Atalanta coach Gasperini after the Champions League game. So the plan, from what I'm told, was already last summer to leave Atalanta. There was a verbal pact between Lookman and Atalanta to leave, and then Atalanta changed their plan because Coop Miners already left the club, and so obviously they didn't want to sell all their best players. But this summer 25, Lookman will go. Lookman will look for new opportunities. So at the moment, still nothing really advanced with any club. There was strong interest from Paris Saint-Germain last summer, but then in January they signed Kvaratskhelia in that position, and so I don't think PSG will be back on this topic. From Premier League, there has always been interest. Arsenal, Liverpool, all these clubs were calling last summer when they had a feeling Lookman was available. Let's see if they will do the same this year. At the moment, it's still nothing concrete or advanced. And then also keep an eye on Juventus, because Juventus are looking for an offensive player, a winger who can add some quality, goals, assists, and Lookman is one of the players they're monitoring. So I think it's going to be busy in the summer for Lookman. Still early to understand where he goes, but there will be movement.
Oh, well, I'll make sure to keep an eye on the GMS platforms, and of course yours as well, Fabrizio. Next up, I'll say Kevin De Bruyne. Now, you know, we've seen him. He's been a bit injured in the last, couple seasons, and he's still a great player. But I get the inkling. Is he going to be leaving this summer or not? What do you say, Fab?
I think there is a really concrete possibility. I'm told that it's not true what was reported in the recent days about Man City already telling Kevin De Bruyne, okay, it's over, you must go, we are not going to extend the contract. They didn't have this sort of conversation now. Then in the next weeks and months, for sure, they will discuss the agent, the player, the club. But the feeling internally at Man City is that there is a strong possibility to see Kevin De Bruyne leaving, trying a new experience. There is interest from MLS. Since long time, he's always been appreciated there, and obviously from Saudi. We still remember those quotes from Kevin almost 1 year ago when he was mentioning the big salary offered from Saudi as something that can change life of the whole family and not just himself. So that's why I think for Kevin De Bruyne there are several opportunities, and at the moment there is a really strong and concrete possibility to see him and more players at Man City leaving in the summer.
Is it free though? Would it be a free?
Free, yes.
Okay.
Free.
Okay.
Fabrizio, let's go to the red half of Manchester. Some suggestions that Victor Osimhen is keen on a move to Old Trafford. It feels financially difficult. Do you sense the links with Osimhen and Manchester United are legit?
Look, Ben, I agree with you on the financial point of view. It really depends on the budget for Manchester United. Now we enter into that moment of the year when in February, March, April, we have a lot of links, but then it's important for Man United to understand how much they can really spend on a striker in the summer window, because they really like Osimhen, they really like Gyökeres too. There are several players they appreciate, but then you have to be able to put the money on the table. And as mentioned, the release clause for Osimhen is something around 75 million euros in the summer. And to answer the first part of your question about Osimhen eventually accepting Man United, my answer is, remember what happened last summer with Chelsea and with more clubs. Osimhen wants the same contract he has at Napoli in terms of salary. So he will not go below the expectations, and it's something around 12 million euros net per season. So the salary is also a big topic, and we know it's financially not an easy moment for Man United. So if Man United will have the budget available, for sure Osimhen is a player on their list. But at the moment, they are still not sure of what they can do. It will also be important to understand about European football, financial fair play, the budget. So we have to be patient on this one.
Absolutely. Let's go to Chelsea now. Big win for them yesterday against Southampton. But what about Cole Palmer? Is there any danger, as some have suggested, that he might leave Chelsea if they don't qualify for the Champions League next season?
Well, look, at the moment, Chelsea are really relaxed. As Maresca is mentioning in public, but also internally at the club, they are really relaxed about the situation of Cole Palmer. First of all, they remain optimistic on the opportunity to get this first place in the league, and so to be able to play Champions League next season. So full focus on the pitch. There is nothing in terms of Cole Palmer informing Chelsea about desire to go. At the moment, Chelsea are really, really relaxed. As Maresca said, the contract is very long. He's a crucial player for them. So at the moment, it's completely quiet.
So sticking with the Chelsea topic, Fab, they're obviously looking at attacking options for next season. The name I keep hearing, and someone that Liv is very interested in, Liam Delap. Is that a move that is looking likely to happen? Is he on top of the list? What can you tell us about that?
He's in the list, for sure. He's a player they appreciate. They already made some contact in January to understand the financial package needed. For Ipswich, obviously, it was impossible to accept any proposal in January. He was untouchable, but in the summer will be different. And so for sure, he's in the list at Chelsea. For sure, he's a player they appreciate. For sure, he's one of the names that Enzo Maresca keeps mentioning in the internal meetings they're having, because obviously he knows the player since they were together at Manchester City Academy. So Delap is there. He's one of the names in the list. He's not the only one, because Chelsea are tracking several strikers. They see several opportunities on the market. There is also Benjamin Sesko, who is very high on Arsenal list for the summer too. So there are several strikers in the list, but Delap is there, and I think that could be a concrete possibility. But again, it's not something guaranteed because they've not started any sort of negotiation now.
I would like to move it on to the Red Bull group. Now, we know that they're doing some amazing things in football, and there's a particular talent as well. Xavi Simons, we've heard a lot about him, obviously, at Barcelona, PSG. He's had good loan spells in the Dutch league, but talk to us. Is he going to be having a summer exit?
I think there is a really concrete possibility also in this case. I can't say 100% because obviously Leipzig just invested big money to get him. It's something close to 80 million euros, add-ons included, to Paris Saint-Germain in January. So the investment was big. But my information is that the player is quite open to trying something different. He spent a lot of time in Bundesliga before he was in Eredivisie. Now, the feeling I have is that the player could be open to trying something maybe in Premier League or La Liga. So Xavi Simons is open to a summer move. Then it depends on the financial package. It depends on Leipzig. We know it's always tough to negotiate with Leipzig, especially after they spent big money on the player just a few weeks ago. So easy one, no, but I think there is a chance for it to happen and for Xavi to move. Last summer, many clubs started calling for Xavi Simons. Then he decided to rejoin Leipzig, but there was Bayern very strong in the mix till the end. There was interest from England, Arsenal, Liverpool, United. So I think for Xavi, there will be movement in the summer, definitely.
Ben?
Yeah, and Fabrizio, just if we stay with New York Red Bulls in particular, there's been some suggestion that maybe Timo Werner is on their radar. Is there a possibility that he goes to MLS? And a bit broader, is your sense as of now that it's unlikely Spurs will trigger that option to buy?
Yeah, I think you've been nice with unlikely. I think it's impossible. From my information, it's something that they already decided internally. It was not a good season for Werner and for Spurs together. So I think it's in the interest of both parties to try something different next season. So the expectation is for Werner to return to Leipzig and then to try a new experience. In terms of MLS and New York, what I was hearing in January when this rumor started for the January window is that there was nothing really concrete into it. Let's see for the summer. In January was never really close from what I heard. I think it will also depend on European opportunities because, maybe now it's February, but maybe closer to the summer window, an European club interested in Timo can offer him the opportunity to be an important player in their project again for next season. And so he maybe decides to continue in Europe. So I think it's a really open situation, but I don't see him staying at Tottenham.
I want to talk about Leeds United as well, Fabrizio. Manor Solomon doing very well of late, but Leeds don't have an option to buy as part of that loan deal. Do you think if they get promoted to the Premier League, they'll try and sign him permanently? And given his form, might we see a bit of a bidding war, particularly from Premier League clubs this summer?
Yeah, for sure. I think Leeds want to keep the player. They will try. Obviously, you need to get promoted because Manor Solomon is a player from different levels. So I agree with you that there will be probably more clubs interested from the Premier League. Again, at the moment, it's not something really advanced yet. The player is fully focused on the pitch from what I'm hearing. So nothing really concrete, but the interest from Leeds is absolutely there in making this deal permanent. So they will try. They will approach Tottenham closer to the end of the season. There was also interest from Italy. Before he joined Leeds United, there was some Italian club prepared to approach Tottenham. Then the player preferred to continue in England. Let's see what happens, but for sure Leeds will try to keep it.
This one, Fabrizio, we know you got to meet Cristiano Ronaldo on the sidelines and you had a nice chat with him. I saw that. Was you asking him about his Al Nassr contract and if he's going to be renewing it? Because I'm sure that that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, look, in January, we had some reports about a deal done, an extension done. That was not the case. And it doesn't mean that he's not staying because my expectation is for Cristiano to stay, to extend the contract and to continue this project at Al Nassr. Then it will take some weeks in order to obviously discuss. It's about the numbers, the project, more than about the financial part is about the project. We know how ambitious Cristiano is. And so to see what Al Nassr want to do in the next seasons in order to build the best squad possible, I think they already sent a very good message by signing a top player like John Duran. They wanted Mitoma. They will bring in a top winger in the summer. So they will be busy. And I think they are showing Cristiano their ambition. So I think there is a very good chance to see Cristiano extending this contract very soon. It's not done as of now, but the conversation has started. And so in the next weeks, we will follow that. But personally, I see Cristiano staying.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Moving it along to Cristiano's former team, Real Madrid, one of his former teams, Real Madrid. We've got the topic of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, is there a prenuptial agreement between Liverpool and Real Madrid? It's obviously gone quiet since the window's been closed, but what's the situation regarding Trent and Real Madrid?
No, there is no pre-agreement, nothing done, nothing sorted, nothing officially decided. But I can confirm once again to you that after we had many rumors on Alphonso Davies' deal done and was not done because he extended at Bayern, after we had rumors about Joshua Kimmich and he was never a target for Real Madrid, every time I ask about these topics to Real Madrid, the answer I'm getting from my sources since March last year, so it's almost 1 year now, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. So they are obsessed with Trent. They want to bring in Trent. they are confident, they are optimistic. So internally at Real Madrid, they feel they have more than good chances to bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold. Then we have to respect the timing, respect the player. There is still Liverpool trying to make something happen in terms of contract extension. My feeling is that Real Madrid will go really, really strong in the next weeks and months in terms of contact to make it happen, because every time you mention other options, the answer is Trent number 1, 2, 3, and probably also 4 and 5. So I think there is a strong possibility for it to happen.
No worries. Well, Fab, I'm going to spare you the issues of answering whether Arsenal are going to be getting a new striker. We can talk about that another time. I want to say thank you very much for your time as usual. And like what we said, happy birthday from myself, Ben, and everyone here at Give Me Sport. And enjoy your time, and say hello to Cristiano next time you see him on the sidelines.
Happy birthday, Fab.
Thank you, guys, and see you soon here as always. Thank you.
What a guy, Fab. What a guy. Now, I just want to give
How old do you think he is, by the way, Joel? I know the answer, but how old do you think he is?
37? 36?
Oh, he's going to hate you.
Oh, is he younger?
He's much, much younger than that.
How old is he?
He's 32.
32. Well,
that's not like a oh my god, he looks so much older. That wasn't why I was gasping. I was just gasping because I just thought whatever. I thought he was like the same age. Yeah, I thought he was like 30. I'd say 36, 37. I think it's because he's been around for so long.
That's now you saved it a few times. You saved it a few times. You're doing well, Liv. Don't worry. You're saving it a few times. It's all right. It is all right. Don't you worry. But listen, this one is for the viewers. We need to start recapping more, because I know that there's people that come in and come out of watching the show. Hopefully you keep watching. But if you are new, we just want to let you know that we've had James Pearce from The Athletic come, and he talked to us about Liverpool and their slim title chances. We've sung happy birthday to Fabrizio Romano. We've had the latest transfer updates from him. We've had Ben. We've set Ben on a mission to answer a particular question at the end of the show. We've kind of discussed Chelsea, and right about now, we have breaking news from Mr. Ben Jacobs.
Well, Manchester City are likely to have another big summer, and that's despite the revamp in January. And I can tell you that they're almost 100% sure to bring in a fullback. Kyle Walker, of course, with that option to buy at Milan. And there's two names on the list I can tell you about. One is relatively known, and that's Andrea Cambiasso. And contrary to some suggestions about the potential to bring him in the winter market, Manchester City were more exploring that in January with a view to the summer. And my understanding and expectation is that Manchester City will place a bid for Andrea Cambiasso and try and land him potentially even in time for the Club World Cup, which would mean that they're going to have to get a move on. It will also depend on whether the FA decide to allow Man City, Chelsea, and any other Premier League club to do business in this so-called exceptional window between the 1st and the 10th of June. And every FA has the opportunity to either say yes or no to that. So if the FA allow Man City to make signings in that exceptional window, keep an eye on Andrea Cambiasso leaving Juventus for Man City in time for the Club World Cup. If not, then they'll have to wait a little bit longer. And the fee will be in the region of 60 million euros, and it will take a minimum of 55 million euros if Manchester City are to have any joy. Juventus's valuation at the moment is closer to 65 million euros, but Manchester City are confident of doing it for less. So the legwork is underway for that one. And then a surprise target, if they either don't get Cambiasso or they can somehow do business with Newcastle United. The other name on the list who's having a phenomenal season at Newcastle is Tino Livramento. And he's not been at Newcastle for that long. And Livramento and Hall, as two fullbacks, are outstanding for Newcastle. So Newcastle don't want to sell, but we're not yet sure what their PSR situation will be come the summer. A lot may also depend on whether Newcastle qualify for Champions League football. So keep an eye on Tino Livramento and Manchester City as a possibility. But the top choice and the most likely at the moment to join Manchester City remains Andrea Cambiasso for at least 55 million euros and potentially as high as 60 million euros. And Man City are going to be very busy this summer.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. Just before, Ben, you heard Joel talk about who we've had on the show so far. And remember, you can watch the show back on Give Me Sports YouTube channel a little bit later on, or you can listen on your podcast app of choice as well. All you have to do is search Market Madness. It's been a great episode so far. So, of course, we want you guys to watch and listen as much as possible. And Ben, just first of all, I mean, you're a busy man. You know, you're busy not just during the transfer window, you're busy during the whole year. So right now, is there anything specific that you've been working on?
Yeah, a few sort of big picture things, and not only just transfers. One is trying to understand the implication for Manchester City of the associated party transaction rules, which I won't go into too much detail with because it's legal and boring. But essentially, if Manchester City find a way of getting that rule book rewritten, they can do more lucrative sponsorship deals with associated parties, and that will help them move even bigger in the summer market because they'll have more leeway. Then tomorrow I've got an interview with the La Liga president, Javier Tebas, and there's a number of things that are going to be asked to him from me, including his take on the financial regulations and Man City, on the Club World Cup, on the European Super League, and also whether we're going to see the possibility of a competitive La Liga game being played abroad, most notably in North America, you would imagine, in the build-up to the World Cup. So that's on my radar as well. I'm taking a little look, as we discussed with Fabrizio, on Manor Solomon and his future, because he's doing very well for Leeds, and Fabrizio's right to point out that Leeds would like to keep him. But by the same token, there's no option to buy there. And there are other Premier League clubs interested. Everton have discussed him internally. Leicester City, if they can somehow stay in the Premier League, another one to watch. They're going to need a striker and some kind of support or long-term succession plan for Jamie Vardy because he's 37 years of age. So I'm working on that one as well. And Saudi moves in the summer is another big thing on my radar as well. My expectation is it's not just going to be about Al Hilal and the possibility of Mo Salah. Al Nassr are going to be busy. I'm told that Mohamed Kudus is one to watch for them. And I think they'll look to bring in a very high-profile, wide attacker in addition to John Duran. We know that they tried for Karim Matoma, for example, from Brighton in the final days of the winter window. But then I think we're going to see Al Shabab, Al Qadsiya, Neom FC, if they get promoted, all very active. So my expectation is that, as with summer 2023, when Saudi went crazy in the market, summer 2025 is going to be the next big wave in Saudi Arabia. And I think, again, there'll be some high-profile Premier League players at threat of leaving England for Saudi Arabia. So I'm working on that one ahead of the summer as well.
Don't ruin it, Liv, because I can see the comments coming up on the screen and you're smiling. Be very, very careful. Do you want to read it or shall I read it?
I'll read it and I'll get your thoughts. So this is a comment we've had in. Liverpool title race can take a big blow if they should lose to Newcastle and Arsenal win against Nottingham Forest. The thing is, right, I just can't see Newcastle, I think, are going to throw everything at the League Cup final. I think they've been so inconsistent in the league. You just never know what you're going to get with Newcastle, that I just think Liverpool are on a roll. I just think it's going to be too much. And actually, I think the more difficult game here is your game, Joel. Like Forest again, but again with Forest, I think it's so weird. Like the first half of the season, they've been brilliant, but there has been games where they've been turned over recently quite a lot. And it's
ups and downs. Remember the first time we played them at home earlier on this season, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's going to be the big one." We wiped them off the park, man. They didn't lay a glove on us.
I know, but the issue is now is that you can't score goals. So it's like this. It could be 0-0. But it's how well you defend, I think, against their counter-attacks, because we know how devastating they've been on the counter-attack this season. But you need to find a way to score, because at the moment you just look it's just like nullified.
It's like we didn't even throw a punch on the weekend. We just went like that. It was really it wasn't hard at all. Like I'm still upset.
Do that punch again.
It's like we went. It just wasn't strong. It's like a baby trying to hit you.
It was more like a slap, wasn't it? It was just like there you go.
Honestly, it was our chance to really weigh it in like a heavyweight. But yeah, unfortunately, we didn't do so. Look, Liv, if I'm to be honest with you, right, my job is to defend Arsenal, but who knows what's going to happen tonight? Who knows if Mourinho is going to turn around and become prime R9 like he was a couple of weeks ago, or if he's just not going to score. That's all I can say. That's it. That's all I can do with.
Yeah, I think there's some good games anyway. Some really good games to look forward to tonight in the Premier League. The scheduling has been a nightmare though, because there's 2 on at Spurs, City, and I think Liverpool and Arsenal, Forest are on at the same time. Then you've got Liverpool, Newcastle. It's like I want to watch them all and I can't. But I'm sure, tonight we'll have a big say in the title race. Ben, just quickly before we move on and talk fantasy Premier League, it's like my 2 worlds colliding. We've got some breaking news.
This is another part of your world, Liv, because it relates to Chelsea. I can't work out whether it's going to excite you or infuriate you, but the Argentine winger Ian Subiabre is on Chelsea's radar, and there's a meeting this week where his agent has flown over to London to discuss a deal. Now, I must stress, this is very much driven by the player side to get in front of Chelsea, but it comes after a recommendation from Alison Marins, Chelsea's South American scout. So we should refer to talks as face-to-face, but still very formative. Chelsea are not committing, they're not bidding at this stage. And Subiabre is 18. He's a winger, but he can play forward as well. He's been capped by Argentina at youth level after originally actually committing to Chile. And he's at River Plate at the moment. So if Chelsea choose to proceed with this, they're going to have to spend a minimum of 18 to 20 million, but we're not at that point yet. But he's on Chelsea's radar, and there's a face-to-face meeting that's due to take place in the next 24 hours in London for Chelsea's hierarchy to learn more.
I mean, wingers are like, I think Chelsea are actually light in that position, but we've already got a couple of South American kids coming in, Estavio being the most obvious one that I know wants to occupy number 10, but Palmer does, so he's probably going to play on the right. So, I mean, what is it with Chelsea and just going for South American youngsters? I mean,
What
it's
is
a
it with
theme,
Chelsea
isn't it?
buying players in general? Like, what?
Yeah, I don't really know, Joel. It's a great question, to be honest, and I don't really have the answer to it. So I think maybe it's time to leave reality behind. I think it is. And actually, for me and you, Joel, it's probably quite, and for you, Ben, actually being a Leicester fan, it's actually quite nice for us all to leave reality behind for a little bit, because it's time to chat fantasy Premier League. Now, to help navigate this, we're joined by Give Me Sports' Gianni Buttice. I mean, Gianni boasts 10 of 100k finishes in the last 12 seasons, by the way. He's also the author of a best-selling FPL book and is regularly seen on not just the Fantasy Premier League show, but the Sky Sports News Fantasy Premier League show as well. I mean, hi, Gianni. Please tell me, first of all, you weren't like me and Captain Cole Palmer last night.
Oh, hey guys, nice to be on the show. Of course I did. Of course I did. He played Southampton. You know, Chelsea scored 4 goals. Cole Palmer was always going to get 2 returns, but he didn't. And that is the infuriating thing about this game, Fantasy Premier League. It can be so unpredictable.
I'm sorry, Joel, just before you ask a question, I literally going back and forth between Salah and Cole Palmer, Salah and Palmer, and you always say pick form over fixtures. And I think it was the Chelsea fan in us, Gianni, that probably did this a little bit more, because I know a lot of FPL experts also picked Palmer. 4 goals and not it was like a double whammy. I was trying to celebrate the goals watching the game, but I also was then like, oh, but Palmer hasn't got a goal or an assist, so what's the point?
Yeah, and you know, I had Enzo Fernandez in my team. Prime example. Enzo Fernandez, brilliant footballer, Chelsea's in-form midfielder, not the best FPL option. And sometimes those two things don't match up and don't align. Our currency in Fantasy Premier League is simply output. It's goals and assists. We don't care necessarily or don't get rewarded for all of those underlying stats that Enzo's so good at. So, yeah, it was a frustrating night for Chelsea fans. And Mo Salah, of course, in action on Wednesday night will do what Mo Salah does, which is 2 goal involvements every game, which is why he's the best player this game has ever seen.
Incredible stuff. You know, like I'm loving the romance that you guys have over fantasy football. But for the new viewers watching, and even for those currently watching, they're like, what are Gianni and Liv talking about? Yeah. Please tell us, Gianni, what is fantasy football?
Yeah, so I mean, there's 11 million managers around the world that play this game, and the Premier League used this game as a way of selling the brand. And it's the biggest fantasy sports game in the world outside of fantasy NFL, which of course the Americans adopted earlier than than we did. But effectively, you pick 15 players. All Premier League players have a fantasy price, and you get 100 million budget. You've got to pick a 15-man squad, and then you've got to rotate that squad. You've got to make transfers. You've got to give someone the armband, the captaincy, who scores double points. And you manage a team full of players that will go and perform at the weekend. And what they do on the pitch does actually matter. And it counts towards your team. If they get a clean sheet, score a goal, get an assist. They're the three main metrics.
Let me ask you about a new metric, which is this assistant manager. And
oh, wow.
I'm going to ask very selfishly because I don't know when to play it. There's not many game weeks left. I think there's one more double week for sure, which involves Newcastle. What's your recommendation about when to use it? And the biggest surprise for me looking at it was I'm all committed to it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to pick it. And then I looked and I was like, I can't actually afford any of these managers. You've got to pay for the extra manager as well. So give me the lowdown, give me some advice, give me some tips, because I'm lost.
So were many. I'm going to try and do this within a minute. And this is part of the complication with this rule. The game has always been really, really simple and easy to understand. For 15, 20 years, this game has been simple. It's appealed to casual football managers or FPL enthusiasts that want to have a team and don't have to spend long on it. With this chip, you need a little bit of thought. You need a little bit of research. And yeah, you're not just buying a player. You have a 16th placing a squad. You can buy a manager. They all have different prices. If you pick a manager that's down the bottom of the table or mid-table, and they're playing a manager that's 5 places more above them, you can get what's called a manager bonus, an additional 10 points for a win. So Oliver Glasner in the last 2 games has caused 2 upsets. We saw him with a big win on Tuesday night against Aston Villa. That came with table bonus, so an additional 10 points. So in short, you want to be backing managers that have that can cause an upset. Vitor Pereira's just done it at Bournemouth for Wolves. We saw David Moyes do it. He got a draw against Liverpool. That came with a bonus. So you're identifying teams and managers that can cause an upset with the chip, and you have it for 3 weeks, and you can make transfers between managers each week.
Go on, you go, because I think you know what I'm going to ask you, Liv.
You go, Joel.
I was just going to talk about your team, because we all know that you're a massive player of this game, FPL, massive. And I just wanted to know, what is your team?
I mean, you can see my team on the screen there. I'm going to get Gianni to maybe rip into it. I don't know, because I haven't had a great week, to be honest, captaining Cole Palmer. What I would say is I do not like the assistant manager chip. It's effectively like a team chip, though, isn't it? It's not. Yeah. You're not picking a manager, you're picking a team. So that's why when Arne Slot got sent off, it would have been absolutely hilarious for those players that picked him to get a minus, but they obviously didn't. So you're picking a team, not a manager, effectively. But I just used it straight away because I was like, I don't like it. I don't really understand it. I understand it a little bit more now, but I was like, I just want to get it out of the way. So I picked, I did Moyes, and then I did Emery.
Oh, nice.
It was okay. I kept Emery for Chelsea, which I sort of was
Whoa, did you?
Yeah, because I just thought we weren't going to win that game, which is so bad. But I was like, whatever. So Gianni, looking at my team there, what do you think I need to do?
I love it. You had Emery for the Chelsea game, and you also had Emi Martinez. I mean, I guess you were chasing Aston Villa at the double game week before that, but look, your team's in good shape, Liv. I mean, I look at Emi Martinez, and just starting there at the top, he's the one I look at and go, whoa, that's not the best of calls. Like Aston Villa, surprisingly, have not been. They're really struggling to keep clean sheets. I was looking at some of the data this morning. Like, I think only 3 teams in the league have conceded, have kept fewer clean sheets than Aston Villa. And now the 3 teams in, you'd expect Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton. But Villa, I think, are on 3 clean sheets in the Premier League. So Emi Martinez, brilliant goalkeeper, doing really well in the Champions League for his save percentages and some clean sheets. But in the Premier League, it's just not been happening. He's not cheap either. So he's one that stands out as a bad pick. But elsewhere, you've got loads of good players there. Like Isak's flying. Salah's obviously a set and forget. But midfielders from Brentford, like Mbermo, amazing talisman for their teams. On corners, penalties, the lot. I think he's the 4th best performing player in the game so far this season. And he's fairly affordable. And then like players like Atara Dango have been playing up front for Bournemouth and listed as a midfielder. And Jean-Philippe Mateta, I mean, every game he seems to be scoring. He is the definition of one of those strikers that can go on streaky runs and you just want to invest in when they're hot. And when he's hot, we saw it at the end of last season and we're seeing it now, he's scoring every game. Great pick.
Yeah, I've had Mateta for a while now, although I did bench him, I think, when he scored a couple against Man United. So I will not be benching him again. What I would say is about that team, since then, I actually benched Ouattara for this game week. So he got 2 points. He's actually on my bench. And I bought in Jared Bowen for Morgan Rogers, which is a bit annoying because Morgan Rogers actually played. But obviously with Villa, I think blanking, and I was just like, let's just get him out. So I've got Jared Bowen ahead of Leicester at home for this game week as well, which I thought was a pretty good move. So I'm actually happy with my team. I would agree with you though. Emi Martinez is the one position I'm 100% looking to change. Also because they blank, I don't want a free hit because I've got enough players, but I want to keep my Palace and that on the bench. So I'm going to change Emi Martinez maybe for this game week coming up. I'm not entirely sure, but I would agree that's definitely the position that I need to change. I just find goalkeepers is just a bit like hard to pick, to be honest, in FPL. What about your team, Gianni? How is it similar to mine? How are you doing in FPL this season?
Joe, we've got loads of similar players there. I mean, with goalkeepers, I try and have a set and forget, and you just try and ride the wave. And even in games when they don't keep clean sheets, you hope for those save points. But yeah, I mean, I'm on a slightly different strategy to you. You mentioned the free hit. That's a week where you can make unlimited changes to your team. And game week 29, which is only a few weeks away, is massively interrupted because of the EFL Cup final. So the two teams in the EFL Cup final and the two teams they were meant to play in the Premier League won't have a fixture. And these are players from popular teams, right? Like Liverpool and Newcastle are affected. Crystal Palace are affected, and Aston Villa. So some will have to sell some really good assets. I am free hitting in that week, which means I can be heavily invested in Crystal Palace players. And Palace are a team I'm absolutely loving at the moment. Glasner's doing well. Their players are affordable, and they've got really good fixtures. So I think as a rule of thumb, like I'm always trying to target hot fixture runs. I mean, Jared Bowen for you this week, Liv, the reason you bought him, the entry point is Leicester at home. And we should be targeting Leicester and Southampton especially. There were loads that punted on a Pedro Neto or a Christopher Nkunku on Tuesday night. I completely understand why, because you can look at Southampton and Leicester and you can see a ceiling that you just don't see when you play other teams, and you can't always call it. It feels like you can call it when you play Leicester and Southampton at the moment, and maybe Ipswich. I mean, saying that, Joel's Arsenal played Leicester only a couple of weeks ago, and they needed to chuck a centre mid that's not played number 9 since he was 8 years old up top with 10 minutes to go. I mean, they were drawing 0-0. If we're ever to know how bad the Arsenal attack is, they were 0-0 against Leicester with 80 minutes on the clock only a few weeks ago. So clearly a team like struggling with a few injuries there. Sorry, Joel, I had to get it in.
Let me just quickly, Gianni, from purely the point of view of a rubbish player, someone that basically just wants to try and catch up with his dad and beat him. I'm about 5 millionth in the league. So all these tactics, everything's out the window. Really what I'm looking to do in the final few weeks is find one or two players that nobody's got, perhaps for good reason, that might just have that out of context, high scoring week. And I'm just interested in a few names. For example, instead of going Cole Palmer like everyone else did, I brought in Ismaila Sarr yesterday. Ooh. And that ended up being an outrageously good pick. He scored 2 goals. He got 3 bonus points. But can you give me just one or two names in your opinion that might not make perfect sense, but are going to give you that big gain if they do deliver?
Yeah, I mean, he's around 10% own. Daniel Munoz, same team as Sarr, obviously, but it's Ipswich and Southampton up next. And Daniel Munoz, for those that watch Palace, they don't have a right winger. Sarr's pretty central, which means Daniel Munoz has full license to attack. And when you look at things like average position maps, I do a lot of that. He's often the highest man on the pitch. Like he's Mo Salah average position, and he's listed as a right back for 4.9 million. So Daniel Munoz is criminally underlooked. The Bournemouth midfielders are always fun, like Semenyo and Dango, but obviously Kluivert more recently has been catching the headlines. Yeah, I'd be looking at teams like that. I mean, Newcastle, loads have been selling Anthony Gordon, but I always think Gordon's one that can hit a high ceiling. He's really lowly owned. Again, he's got Liverpool on Wednesday night, but after that, it's West Ham, Brentford, and Leicester. And just targeting those with good fixtures. I mean, Nkunku and Neto aren't brilliant assets, but because they played Southampton, they both returned big. Next up, they've got Leicester, and no one owns Pedro Neto and Nkunku. Because they've got Leicester, you can buy them.
Yeah.
Great tips.
Very quickly, Gianni, I was going to recommend and comment on your shirts in the background there before you gave those Arsenal comments. Talk to us a little bit very quickly about Serie A. What's going on over there? We can see that Inter Milan are top, really close with them, and Napoli and Atalanta still in the mix. Can you talk to us about how it's going over there?
Yeah, I mean, this league is always fun. Like, a common misconception is you don't get goals in Serie A and it's boring football. Quite the contrary. They've had 5 Champions League places this year. There's a lot of unhappy people in Serie A at the moment because it's unlikely they're going to get 5. The coefficient is lower. La Liga doing well in the European competitions, obviously the Premier League. So yeah, it's not too pretty. But yeah, I mean, Conte's there and there's always fireworks with Conte. How long he'll be at Napoli, we don't know. Inter Milan are still the favourites. And they are Serie A's hope in the Champions League. We saw them run Man City so close 2 years ago in that final. Inter arguably the better team there. So there's always good players to watch. I mean, McTominay's in the league and doing so well for Napoli. So we're loving that. We're loving Atalanta. Although Gasperini, the manager, and Lookman, the best player, current best player in Africa, is out of action at the moment, having missed the penalty. So yeah, it's always drama in Serie A, always fun.
Oh, Gianni, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to speak to you as always. You can keep up with what Gianni is doing over on the Give Me Sport website. And of course, you can follow him on X at Gianni Buttice. This is Market Madness from Give Me Sport.
I have to say, I really enjoyed the show with you two today so far, despite a few of the digs that I'm looking to overlook. But I have to say, for everyone watching every week, or every time we're on, shall I say, we send Ben on a mission. It's a question challenge. And to remind the listeners and the viewers, we asked Ben to find out, what does Eberechi Eze's future look like this summer? Ben, have you been able to go away and find out the information for us watching and listening?
Yeah, I have a few little things to tell you about Eberechi Eze. So it's a no for Chelsea. That's the first thing, Liv. I know we referenced that at the beginning of the show, but there's 2 clubs in particular to watch: Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United. And I can add a third outside of the Premier League, which is Napoli. And right now, of those 3, Tottenham are the most concrete. And Eberechi Eze is very open, if not it be his preference, to stay in London. So that could give Spurs a little bit of an advantage. I don't think it'll be a complete deal breaker, but he likes the idea of maybe leaving Palace but still being able to stay in London. And that could open the door for Tottenham. Now, this summer, there is a release clause at £68 million, which will come back into force. It was the same number that was also eligible for clubs in the first part of the summer window. It's a complicated clause, though, and you have to go through the front door. So this isn't about just triggering the clause. It isn't about approaching the player. You have to go to Crystal Palace. It was the same with Michael Olise. And they're not just seller in this capacity. They're effectively the broker. So you've got to express your interest through the club. Then they will go to Eze. And from there, he will decide who, if anybody, he wants to engage with. And we shouldn't rule Palace and staying out simply because they're having an excellent season all of a sudden now. They've turned their form around. So Palace's perspective is they'd like to keep the player for longer. From Tottenham, Manchester United and Napoli's perspective, none of them are thinking either about triggering the clause. Tottenham have a valuation for Eberechi Eze of much closer to £50 million. So it'd be interesting to see whether Crystal Palace are prepared to do business for less than the clause. If not, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to prize him away. But Spurs, Manchester United, who also have their own financial considerations, and Napoli, all serious about Eberechi Eze, but it's unlikely that any of them will want to trigger the clause. It's more likely they'll be hoping to go to Palace and see whether there's a deal to be had at a different kind of number.
Oh, interesting. I wonder who will get Eberechi Eze. Whoever does, though, I'm jealous because he's great. Before we quickly, I think we have one more bit of breaking news, Ben.
Yes, We've had a lot of breaking news today, and the last bit of breaking news is quite a big one, and that's Jared Branthwaite, who, remember, Everton want to keep, and they value it in excess of 70 million, is drawing interest from Real Madrid. And on the one hand, no real surprise here because Carlo Ancelotti gave him his Premier League debut at Everton. But remember, this isn't really about Ancelotti naming targets or driving business. And Real will add a centre-back along with the full-back. We know they like Trent Alexander-Arnold, and whoever comes in is going to outlast Ancelotti. That's not to say he'll definitely go this summer, but anyone coming in on a long-term contract is likely to outlast Ancelotti, and therefore the manager is not the one with any autonomy in Real's model. So Branthwaite has been discussed. Real have a valuation which is very optimistic of around £50 million, and they've also got Tottenham's Christian Romero on their list in this position as well. So keep an eye on Real Madrid. No contact with Everton yet. Everton's position is the same with Manchester United. They don't want to sell. They want 70 million plus. Financially very difficult for Manchester United to return to the race, but the interest is still genuine. So Branthwaite could leave Everton, but the likelihood under the Friedkin group, because Everton feel more PSR compliant at the moment, and Everton are going to stay in the Premier League, is that someone's going to have to go a lot higher than that 50 million number that Real are currently considering. So one to watch for the summer, because Branthwaite is open potentially to a new challenge, but I expect Everton to be quite bullish. They will not be forced into anything cut price.
If I was Branthwaite, right, I would download Duolingo so quick and do 3 to 4 Spanish lessons per week because I want to get there and get my Spanish going ASAP. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. He needs to push it. But for everybody watching today, I want to say thank you very much. It's been great to do the show with yourself, Ben and Liv. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you in 2 weeks' time. As usual, we'll be talking about the biggest football transfer stories with top guests. And you can watch us live on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Search @Gimme Sport, or you can listen on your podcast app of your choice. The links are in the description.
Yeah, we've covered so much today. And for more information on any of the stories we've discussed and so much more, all you need to do is head to givemesport.com. We will see you next time on Market Madness. Bye-bye.